Welcome to the Houndsman XP podcast, and we're in for another great episode today. We've got my partner in crime, Steve Fielder, on the line with us. Steve, how are you today?
I'm just doing great, Chris. Really good.
So what have you been up to lately?
You've been working me too hard.
You're supposed to be retired.
Yeah, I'm retired, all right. No, this was writing week. I do a couple of articles for CNH Publishing, American Cooner Magazine. And so I've been writing, been burning some brain cells this week.
Well, I'll tell you what, it wouldn't take much of that for me to burn my brain cells up. I'm working and trying to do a podcast and try to keep the wheels on this thing. And I'll tell you what, it's going to get a whole lot easier right now, I think, with this announcement that we're getting ready to make for all our listeners. And Steve, do you want to do the honors or you want me to launch it?
Well, I think I'm sitting here just excited to hear about it. I want to hear it myself, so you go ahead.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have got a sponsor, a title sponsor for the Houndsman XP podcast, and we are so excited to have W Hound Supply come on as a title sponsor for us. And we have got Buddy Woodberry, the founder of W Hound Supply, on the line with us to help us make this announcement and get some background on W. Buddy, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. You guys make me sound pretty cool. A lot cooler than I really am, guys.
Yeah. Well, Buddy, why don't we just start out by talking about W and give us a background on the company and where you're operating from, and I'm just going to turn it over to you, and you can introduce. I can't imagine anybody really needs an introduction to W. I mean, I see you guys everywhere. I've been a customer for several years. I've always been impressed with the service I get from W. I don't know how much you invest in stickers and calendars, but I've got stickers and calendars, and your shirts are off the charts as far as style. When I walked around APA Breed Days this year, I thought you guys were a sponsor at APA Breed Days. As many hoodies and W hoodies that I saw on people walking around there. So just chime in here, buddy, and let us know a little bit about W.
Man, no, you're doing good. Just let you keep talking. You do a lot better than I would. Man, the truth is we're really kind of humble. Like it's still a real humble experience for us to even go to those things and see our logo and I mean, me and my wife both are just like, can you believe that? We just talk to ourselves and we just sometimes can't believe what this has become. It didn't start like that, but it actually, it started with a bunch of mistakes, and we just finally got one right, and that was, finding the right customer base, that we kind of liked, and it just, our customers took us there. We always, I don't know, we put a little email there, at the end. It just kind of reminds us that it's our customers that have got us where we are, and not so much, yeah, we gotta pull the right strings and we gotta do the right thing, but as long as you put the work in it, hound guys are pretty cool, and dog guys, hound guys, it's a really cool community, I guess.
So where is W located, buddy?
Washington State, if you can imagine that, state that has lost a lot of hunting, I think it was 96, the initiative over here in Washington for cougars and bears and bobcats. So yeah, ironically, we're out of Washington State, and it's been, when I got in hounds, I was kind of right after the ban. I got with a guy who was doing some bear work and learned through the ropes, and so that's the cards we had to deal with. Is Washington. We love it. We do a lot of shipping. And our biggest customer base is, of course, out of the state. So,
And you've got a pretty extensive website on the internet. We'll get to that because we definitely want people to know where to find you. But you guys just did an overhaul on your internet. It's awesome, by the way. It really flows well on a mobile device for me. It's real easy to navigate. But so tell us about getting involved in. I got to ask this: how in the world does a guy get involved in hounds after the ban? After it all starts shutting down and the world starts coming down around you?
You know, it all before W, like Hound Supply. I had W graphics before, and it wasn't even about hounds. It started out about deer and elk decals. Didn't fly. You know what I mean? It was more of an expensive hobby, if you would, but. I got involved with OUSDA early on. I had a friend, and actually, you know, his name's Tim Cook, out of, he's over in North Plains now, or Yamhill or somewhere, but he brought me into OUSDA, and the guy named Rod Clawwater, who passed away, was president back then, and it was just the hound organization that really showed me the behind the scenes on what it takes to do something politically, you know, how much effort it takes. And so that's kind of where we started.
Buddy,
you know?
Tell us what OUSDA is, because if we start talking acronyms, and I'll have to start throwing out military acronyms and stuff, and that'll get messy.
Yeah, Oregon United Sporting Dog Association. So,
okay.
So yeah, and right now I'm vice president on that board. I tell people I won't take president and I won't take treasurer. You know, those are the two positions I won't take with W, because I don't want conflict of interest. But they put me in as vice president, and it really showed me how much work goes behind the scenes, and you don't see it. You know, it's not out there in front of people, but there's a handful of guys in every state that really work tirelessly to fight for everybody. And so that's kind of how the ball started rolling when I got involved, and then slowly my business started following my passion. And so OUSDA was kind of at the starting point of that. So
you had hounds, and then you got involved in OUSDA, and then that's when the business kicked in behind it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. Because I had a sticker machine. You know, back when I worked at Intel, I knew at some point, you know, a corporate job just wasn't going to be it for me.
Right.
I didn't realize what was going to be. I didn't realize this was it either, but, you know, somewhere in between, you know. So I would go to a local sportsman show, and we'd make these elk decals and you know, funny decals on, you know, Calvin peeing on anti-hunter, you know, all these different things you'd see at one of the little swap meets, and we try to sell those. And gosh, I'd take a week off of vacation for Intel to make the less money that Intel would pay me to go do this show. But it was kind of cool taking money, you know what I mean? You're moving money back and forth and making decals, and we'd have to prep decals for 2 weeks before to take a week off vacation. Essentially, I was just basically giving money to Intel, you know. It wasn't a business. It wasn't anything that was going to sustain me, but it was sure fun. And it took me a little while to realize that I was spinning my wheels and going nowhere.
So
but then the decals kind of tied into the dogs and stuff. So
yeah.
that's kind of how it started. You know, once I was like, oh, there was no dog decal, so I'd make a dog decal.
Steve's got a question, and he's going to chime in here in a second, but I want clarification, because when you Google DU Supply, you get DU Hound Supply and you get DU Hunting Supply. Which is the official name of your company, buddy?
The official name is WLLC. But we
okay.
It's really more confusing for you.
Yeah.
So we started out as W Graphics, and it was W Graphics first. And we were actually selling hound supplies as W Graphics. We still get some customers that still refer to us as W Graphics. And then about that time, it was trying to make a website, and I needed to make not a long website, but so we needed to do a change because graphics just wasn't going to help us grow. We didn't have a good logo. You know, I had this corny logo, And so the effort was made, and you know, this is the learnings I did was, okay, WLLC, because I didn't know where I was going to go. I knew, by this time I already had three failing things, you know, three things I tried that failed. So I was like, well, W Graphics didn't work. I think we tried Tough Girl. I think we tried Sportsman's decals, and we tried a bunch of different things to sell. You know, tree dog wear. We've kind of abandoned that, but. So that's why I said WLLC, is because then at least I can be W, you know, parking lot cleaner, you know what I mean, and just keep moving. You know what I mean? This hound thing don't work out, I can go sweep parking lots or something, you know, which I've already tried that once, it didn't work. But so that's why it's WLLC, is because I can move where I need to move for that. But and hunting supplies we went with, because I just don't want to narrow me down too much, so that I can, if I ever have the opportunity to branch out to deer and elk, or, you know, a little bigger consumer market, I can. And so the word hound, I just stayed away from that, just because I've already narrowed myself so many times before. So W Hunting Supply would be the what I do business as, and that's what my website is.
All right.
Buddy, let's drill down a little bit farther. Tell me what W means. What is the significance of W?
Yeah, so I always joke, it's either the smartest thing I did or the stupidest thing I did. So my last name is Woodberry, and it starts with a W. And if you go back to the graphics days, I didn't want to call myself Woodberry Graphics. So, and I also didn't want to be last in the phone book, because I thought phone books were going to be where you got all your business from. So I thought, oh, I don't want to be AAA Graphics, because, you know, that was just not original. So I cleverly came up with the word, you know, W is a way to say my last name's Woodberry. And the funny thing is for 10 years, I don't know how long I've been doing this, every time I call a vendor that doesn't know me, I got to spell out, you know, I can't just, oh, W Graphics. I can't find you. Well, that's because you're looking in the W's and you need to look in the D's, you know, so I always joke that I have to spell it out almost every time. But once you get it, I was gonna say the smartest thing is once I have to explain that, it's kind of like a jolt that happens where you know, if it's just, it's an aha moment, you know what I mean? So they don't forget it, you know. So that's the clever part about it, which was not intended. I mean, I had no intention on that, but just the things I've learned is if you have a real smooth transaction, nobody remembers that. But if you gotta argue and explain your name every time, they kind of remember that.
Well, I want to know a little bit more about the company. Okay, I'm one of these guys out here east of the Mississippi, and we're up to our chins in coons and coon hounds. In the eastern mountains, we've got a lot of bear hunters, we've got bobcat hunters, and all those things. We got fox hunters, beaglers, all these things. But I want to know the core of your business. Obviously, it's not graphics anymore, although your graphics are great, as Chris has said, and they're very visual. What is the core of the W business, and what can that business mean to the listeners of Houndsman XP?
That's a really good question. You know, I always refer back to the big game, and by big game I include kind of bobcat, coyote, you know, the varmint seem to be, if I'd say our core customers, has been that way, you know, bear, cougar, bobcat, you know, coyote, we've got some deer and hog. But I like to think of it more as like the more dedicated hunter, if that makes sense. You know, it seems like a lot of our customers, I mean, this isn't like, oh, you get a dog and you go out, you know, twice a season. It's like if you got weekends, you're hunting every weekend, or you're going out after work 3 days a week, or, you know what I mean? Like, the dog is a central part of their lifestyle. Right. You know, it's not just
in other words, they're extreme houndsmen, right? These guys are extreme houndsmen.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of one of the reasons we get a lot of people, not to sidetrack you, but everybody asks us about a pro staff, and, you know, because we put pro staff on some of our sweatshirts, and we've made the decision that most of our customers would kind of qualify as a pro staff for most businesses. And so, you know, we've kind of just where we don't go pick a couple guys because it'd be really difficult. Shoot, there's guys that hunt a lot more than I do, or next to the next guy, and so a lot of our customers we kind of consider that pro staff. So that's kind of why we did that.
Yep, makes sense. Well, what is your background with hounds, buddy? I mean, what individually? I mean, personally is the word I want to use. How much are you involved with hounds? I know you're very busy with your business now, but just let our listeners know a little bit about you and your experience with the dogs.
Well, I am really hard-headed, and I don't learn as good, and so I keep trying, and I feel like I'm getting a lot better, but I have 4 right now. I like to keep about 3 to 4 is where I've learned that for me personally, I'm not as good of a trainer as some people are. And so back when I was trying to, and I also just strictly really focus on cats as much as I can.
Right.
Because there's guys that can train multi-purpose dogs. I'm not one of them. When I was trying to, I was hunting bears on some deprivation permits and stuff. Well, my dogs would chase the elk and the coyotes, and it was just like either all or nothing, So I kind of learned, I don't know how many years ago, that I just do better just to keep my dogs focused on one animal, and that tends to be a cat.
Right. Well, I would assume that your experience with the dogs has greatly helped you, especially in the customer service area of W. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it helps me relate to the customer. So and I got to remind some of my staff, that may not be, dog hunters, that it's a pretty big deal when something goes wrong with this equipment. It's easy to just think, oh, well, you just got to do this, or, you lost your maps or whatever. But when your whole world's out there in the woods and something goes wrong, I mean, it's a pretty big deal, So that really helps me relate. When I see an issue, I can relate to that feeling. I've lost a dog. I've spent 3 days, before Garmin in a canyon, hiking a canyon every day, looking for a dog, just praying to watch that dog come out of the canyon. And so sometimes it's if you're just looking at the business side of things, whether it's Garmin or somebody who hasn't hunted or hasn't spent behind letting their dog go, it's easy to not see that relationship that this customer can be either upset or frustrated, and so to relate to them has been really helpful.
I'm sure. Can you imagine a day before Garmin, or as we say back here, beep beep collars and all that? I can. I know
I can too.
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Yeah. When you talk about frustration, oh man, those years growing up and hunting in West Virginia and those hills and hollows and losing a dog, and there's nothing more frustrating, more painful than that. So I definitely get what you're talking about there.
Yeah,
I've fallen asleep to that beep like so many times in a truck, and you wake up and the beep's gone, and you're like, crap, I gotta go find another canyon to go drive and listen to the beep again, at 3 a.m. Oh
yeah.
I remember the days when, of course, we all used plywood dog boxes back in those days. But I used to build dog boxes light enough so that I could set them out of the truck and stake the door open so the dog would be there the next day, because we weren't even using beep beep collars in '83. I remember when I got my first wildlife material system, and I thought I just moved into the big leagues. And but I remember setting those dog boxes out and coming back the next day and a hound poking his head out of the door and thinking, yeah, I wish you'd have come back last night.
Yes.
The DT3. That
What's-
was the one. That was my first one. The DT3, the little box on the end on the Yagi antenna, and it would track 3 collars, and those wildlife collars. Yeah, I remember those days.
Yep.
For sure.
So what year would you say that, Steve, I think you were going to ask this question, what year W Hunting Supply actually kicked off, buddy? I mean, how long have you been in business serving the houndsmen across the United States?
So real quick, I established a business. When I started trying to make a business, it was about 2000. Is when I bought that first sticker machine. So that's when the word W started forming, trying to make a business. About 2010, maybe, my wife quit her job and started working with the business full time. Actually, I can tell you when it was. It was like 2009. Now I'm gonna get in trouble because I don't remember my boy's birthday, but I think it's 2009. She started working from home when we had our first son, and she kind of really started putting the wheels on it. I always say, took the square wheels and started making them round. Yeah. And put the effort on it, and so she really got the thing started where we had something. And by the time so that would have been 2009, where we were selling hound supplies and just getting into the Garmin and Tritronics, all that when it first started hitting. And then my daughter was born 2011, and that was when my wife pretty much, dang near in tears, pretty much told me that we either shut W down or I quit Intel. It's either we do this or we don't do it. And so we had a lot of discussion. That was a hard thing to leave a decent paying job with benefits and all that, but it just got to the point where having two kids, and the boy not quite understanding that mom's attention had to get spread between the new baby, and then there's this thing called W, and so she was actually having to lock him in the turning point was she had to lock him in the bedroom. He was screaming and mad, and because she had a phone call, and she had to try and take a phone call, and all our customers were really cool if they would have known, but that day she said, "This is it. I'm not doing that no more," and so we just had a real come to Jesus moment, and and we just said, "Okay, we're gonna try it."
Does your wife hunt?
Yes, she does. Yeah, she's actually a better dog handler, trainer than I am, probably.
My wife is too, but I can't get her to go hunting with me. She can. She was teaching my blue tick puppy to fetch on the porch last night. I'm lucky to. It seems like I struggle to get them to sit when they come out of the kennel, and here she is on the porch talking nice to them and got this puppy fetching. So I call her the dog napper. She is. Yeah, she's the world's worst
I've
dog
learned. I've gotten better. I used to be a little too hard, and so the dog just wouldn't even listen to me. And I've just kind of learned that there's got to be a balance. But yeah, she likes to go, and she loves the dogs. Absolutely. She probably would have been more of a, with the wrong person. She probably would have been on the wrong side of this political aspect. But she absolutely loves these dogs and the fact that they have a job, and she's really good at it.
A lot of people don't realize how much these dogs mean not only to us as hunters, but also to our families. And when we were working with the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance and developing or copying the Don't Shoot My Dog campaign, we actually got that idea from Michigan, and probably after a conversation I had with you, Steve. But that's one of the things that we used to raise awareness with prosecutors and police officers when they responded to a hound that had been shot. Was you've not only just killed a valuable hunting dog, but you've taken an important part of the family away from. Because my kids, I posted pictures the other day of my son. He's 18 now, and he's probably 4 years old with a little mountain cur. They just were always with me doing stuff like that. So that's what people fail to understand that are not in the hound sports and not houndsmen.
And I don't think we've done a good job on portraying that sometimes. I think sometimes we just like to be in the woods. We like to play with our dogs in the woods away from cameras and people and attention. And so we let other people describe who we are as a group, and that's not always good.
Exactly, buddy. We've for far too long we've let the media, people that really don't understand it all, just like you said, define who we are, and that's part of the reason that we're having this discussion today, and that we have this Houndsman XP podcast is to change that dynamic, try to get people thinking in a different direction, because what we're doing is good, and more people need to know that it's good.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the main reasons that I even considered joining you guys. I'm pretty careful with our brand, and that was the thing that I noticed is you guys were really trying to make an effort on the political side.
Well, it seems like that was a mutual thing there, buddy, because before I decided to pursue W as a sponsor, I spent some time on your website and looked around at all the different organizations, state organizations, that you provide a space, a place where somebody can go and find their state hound organization on your website. They can join there. You've got their logos there. All those things are there. And then when I talk to other houndsmen, they're like, man, Buddy helps us with fundraising, or, he just helps us out with our events. And I just couldn't find anybody that said that you were in it just to, build a brand. You were actually out there trying to put something back into the sport. And that's why I thought it was so important to pursue you. And we like that part about you too. Sounds like a big kumbaya session.
Thank you. Yeah, we just pat each other on the back over here.
Let me have part of this group hug here.
Okay, go ahead.
I talked to my very long time good friends up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Joe and Nancy Hudson. I've known them forever.
I had to pay those guys a lot of money to say something good about me. Joe and Nancy.
And here I'm talking to Joe. We talk about twice a year, and when we do, it's a long one. And he's telling me all about Buddy and all about W and all about what W is trying to do for the houndsmen. And then we fast forward to just this past week when Chris and I were interviewing a guest that'll be coming up, I think, in a week or so, right. Mike Thorman with the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation. Guess whose name comes up? So I think that those things, in my background, Buddy, that was the most rewarding part of the job that I held for many, many years with the registries, was that legislative work. And it's a fire that burns down deep in my soul, and I know it does yours. And I think that's just one of the reasons, aside from the great products and the great customer service, and people can tell just from this conversation that you're the real deal. And those are all the things that came to the forefront with us, and we're just really pleased that we're going to be working with you going forward.
Yeah, Joe and Nancy and Mike Thorman and a lot of the guys in Wisconsin. I mean, Michigan and Wisconsin, really, those two states are really good organization. As far as, I know they have their ups and downs. Everybody's got their drama sometimes, but they've really, I've had the opportunity to sit down and just meet with those guys, and they've been working at this a long time. They got a lot of their political stuff kind of, I don't want to say figured out, because it's never quite figured out, but they got a lot of experience that I've tried to learn from. So I can try to help them where I can, but I definitely probably take more from that relationship than they do.
Well, they certainly do take it to heart, and I was fortunate to live in Michigan for about, 20 years, close to it, and worked with those guys. And they have a heart for it, and they have the knowledge, and they get it done up there. They really do an amazing job. Really do. Yeah. Well, at just what point did you decide that this political aspect of the hound world was something that you wanted to be involved in? I mean, was it always there, or is it something that became clear to you? You had an epiphany one day, or what?
Like I said, it all relates back to Oregon, and I was just in that group with Rod and Zip and some of the old timers out of Oregon that are are still running the ship, or we're trying to take it over for them. Is a couple of us younger guys, but Ted Craddock, some of those older guys that you just really got to learn, and they'd have their annual convention, and that's how you kind of raise some money to do something politically, whether you build a bank account to fend them off for the next time. But these guys, you could just tell I wasn't a part of that ballot measure 18 and 94. It was before my time, and I wasn't a voting age, but you could just see that heartbreak in these guys. That this was their livelihood, and they lost it.
Yep.
And so that's kind of what just resonated with me. And once you start getting in that group, you start learning, California and CHC and Utah, and so just naturally, you just learn those guys that are trying to put in their heart and soul into not only chasing their dogs, but trying to fix something for their kids and their grandkids, which is double duty. It's easy to just grab a dog, go out in the woods, and go hunt. But then to come back and go, well, now we need to do it for my kids so that they can do it later. So you just start meeting those guys, and it's hard not to just want to help. So it's not as, I don't know. Give me more credit than it is. When you actually talk to them, you got to kind of be heartless to be like, no, So you just want to be helpful.
I got it. I was at the UKC when all that came down, and with one of my hats there was legislative affairs, and as I remember, what do they call that corridor down through Oregon there? There was something about
Willamette Valley. Yeah, Willamette Valley probably. I don't the I-5 corridor.
I think and I think that's where most of the opposition came from. I think. Yeah. To the hounds people, and out to those of us out east, that was a domino that was going to fall, and in fact did fall, and it was a wake-up call for a lot of people across the country. And it was about that time that I formed the State Canine Awareness Network through UKC. We called it SCAN. We had the little pins with the empty dog collar to signify if we lose our sport, all we'll have to remind us of our dogs are their empty collars. And we, there was just such a feeling of loss all across the hound community at that time. And I can definitely see how that would affect you as well.
I remember when
it's taken a while.
When it all happened. For me, it scared me. I was like, if they can lose this in the West, I always thought it was safe, and being young and naive. So as I was working for the DNR at the time, and that kind of spurred me on to wake up and pay a little bit more attention to what's going on around you, because, man, that was a scary deal. And then we just watched the dominoes continue to fall.
Yeah, and it's hard politically to rally after a loss. You know what I mean? Once you get beat down, I mean, there's something to be said for you lose, and then we lost in '96. They lost, the trying to get it back, and it takes a while to get something. You kind of need some positive feedback. Just keep fighting and losing, it just beats everybody down, and the morale goes down, and so it's just. Hopefully, there's a lot more cougar problems, and we're kind of starting to, see the fruits of that ballot measure 18, and I don't know what the answer is, but it's starting coming full circle now,
Well, that's good. Adversely, out in Michigan, when we faced that Proposition D right about the same time, that would have stopped bear hunting over bait and with hounds. It was a referendum issue, and we defeated it 60-40. And that, greatly encouraged the efforts out that way. And you mentioned the Michigan organizations and the Wisconsin organizations. I remember at that time, Wisconsin was just a fledgling organization with a lot of drama, as you say, and not doing much at all. But when they saw what happened in Michigan and what could be done, then it inspired other people to get involved as well. So,
and I tell you, you go to their annual convention, and it is impressive.
yeah.
In central Wisconsin, like I every time I sit back and in awe. I mean, they can drink a lot of beer, but they are there, and they are.
It's Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's what I didn't get that memo, right? I'm not a big drinker, but yeah, they cases and cases and cases, but man, they come together in Michigan and that, but Wisconsin has a big convention, and I don't know if it's 2,000 or 3,000 people come in on this place, and I remember the first year. We had a guy tell us, he goes, you got to come to this show in Wisconsin. We don't do shows very often, so you don't see us at a lot of the events and shows. It's just not part of our business model. But so we show up, it was me and Matt, and we had a suitcase full of stuff. We're thinking, okay, whatever. We've been to a lot of these different events, and normally they're small, and coming from the West. And me and Matt set up our stuff, and it's like noon on Friday. We're a couple of hours in it, so we're almost sold out. And we come around the corner, we're like, yeah, how you doing? Oh, that's good. And we're like, yeah, we're doing good. We got this and that. And he goes, well, you haven't even hit the busy day. We got an empty table, and we're like, well, we better learn to talk because we don't got nothing to sell. So that was the first day, and it was amazing how many hound guys came through that place.
Well, buddy, if you could remember what it was like before they got to that point, you would be truly amazed. Because there was a lot of infighting, and I know, we're not naming names, but people would admit this, there was no leadership and no one knew which way to go. But boy, they came over. I remember them coming to the UP Bear Houndsman banquet that Joe and Nancy put on every year up there, and I was privileged to speak at that a few times, and they just came with an open mind and said, teach us, how to do this, how you're doing this, how are you raising $30,000 a year at your banquet? And man, they took the ball and ran with it and have done a phenomenal job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, buddy, Steve and I have agreed to let you ask us some questions as well. Are you prepared to do that?
Yeah.
all the cards are on the table, so
now it's my turn. This is
now it's your turn.
Well, so my first question, I guess, is, what kind of intrigued me was, and Steve being up north, and you're Indiana, I think, right?
I am Indiana. Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, I'm living in Florida now, buddy, but I lived up north for many years.
So being on that east side, and I know Steve was real heavy in the UKC and the coon hunting stuff, but it seems like you guys talk about a lot of the Western issues, and so that was one of the things that, for me, both raised an eyebrow, I guess, and I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that because, I don't hear a lot of that, minus the northern, North Carolina. I know there's some. It's not all, black and white, but just coming from that Indiana and that coon hunting world, I was just really surprised to hear you guys talking a lot about that. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I can go first, Steve, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Well, with my background in wildlife management, or actually enforcement, I have my ear to the ground about a lot of issues happening across the West and also in the East. And even though there were some lost battles, I guess you could say, in Washington and Oregon, I still watched how Western houndsmen came together and united and set up some very strong alliances out there. People in the West I've spent not enough time out there. I wish I could move my family there. But my observation of people in the West is you have a house to stay in, but you live outside. And people in the West are very in touch with the natural resources and the mountains and just being outdoors. So those things are very near and dear to them. And so it seems that you've got a little better strategy of how to deal with some of the controversy or some of the attacks on our hunting rights. Some of the biggest organizations in the world are in the West. And so that's why I started paying attention to what was happening in the West, and then tried to bring some of that stuff back to the East. Not that I went out there and observed it, but just from my observations and trying to emulate some of that same concern for the resource. You know, these hound sports back here are very, very important to a lot of people. I think sometimes we get tunnel vision about what the hound sport involves. It's not just about me and my dog, because if we can't come up with a strategy to be involved in this fight effectively against the anti-hunting crowd, then we're going to lose it. And we've already seen, like I said, I mean, that scared. It startled me and scared me. I thought, man, if Washington can lose, Oregon can lose, what's next? You know, and it's coming this way, and we're never going to defeat this one state at a time. You know, the Houndsman in Indiana can't survive a multi-million-dollar organization like HSUS that would come in here and drop millions and millions of dollars into stopping our hound sports. And so that's why we set up the model of the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance. We did look at other successful conservation models that Jerry Mull and I did together, and we looked at those models like National Wild Turkey Federation, Ducks Unlimited, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and tried to bring some of that same business model, if you will, to houndsmen in the state of Indiana. We are not to the level of Michigan or Wisconsin bear hunters. We've had our ups and our downs, but guys have really got these people, guys and gals, whoever's turning a hound loose back east here, has got to realize that it's not just about your next night hunt or your night champion win or the money at a money hunt or something like that, because we got to wake up and we got to become involved. And so that's what's been my driving factor, buddy.
Yeah,
well, buddy, if I
that's
could,
probably why I'm there. Yeah, Steve.
well, no, I know that what Chris is telling you is exactly true. I come at this thing from a lot of different angles, I guess. You know, I grew up the son of a bear hunter. Big game hunting was job one in our family. Then I had the opportunity to go to work for the registries, and those we worked more closely with the coonhound people. But I never lost my love for the big game hound and big game hunting. My Western experience came in pieces. I lived in West Texas for a year and hunted out there when I was in the Air Force. I later made friendships with Gary Washburn in New Mexico and hunted hunted bear on horseback with hounds in the Lincoln National Forest in southern New Mexico, and then through a professional guide, Tom David, out in Arizona, I was fortunate to go out and hunt the White Mountain Apache reservation out there, hunting bear with hounds. And then I've hunted coon in Wyoming. The West, for me, is a spiritual place. It's, I love the outdoors, and I always have. But I've always had just this drawing, like Chris says, it would be great to be able to live out there. But in the bigger scheme of things, we're all houndsmen. Whether we live in the West and we pursue a mountain lion on dry ground, or we're down here in the swamps of Florida wading water up to our chins with a nice stick to take care of the cottonmouths and hopefully don't run into an alligator. We all are cut from the same cloth. We love a hound. We love to listen to the hound. We thrill to the chase. We love the dogs like family members, as we discussed before, and it becomes a part of our DNA. And that's, when we talk about a Western houndsman or an Eastern houndsman, we're all one and the same. But I think in
Oh, yeah.
the larger view of things, Chris and I love hounds. We love hound people. We hope to be able to do this as long as we possibly can. Some of us don't have as long as others, unfortunately. But I think that's who we are and why we wanted to do this podcast. And it came down in our many discussions was we want to bring all those hounds people together with one purpose, and that is to preserve this sport for future generations.
Cool. I got 2 other questions I'm going to ask each of you. I'll start with Chris. How did it start, and what would you do differently? I mean, you're still pretty early on, so you got, 5 or 6 podcasts at this point done, or how many have you done?
We've done 7 podcasts. We've done 7
okay,
today.
So you're experts now. So we'll just, now that you're experts on this deal, what would you do differently?
That's why we had that big,
I always learn from my mistakes.
That's why we had that big technical discussion before we got this one started, because we've got this figured out.
Perfect.
So the podcast, I've been waiting to be able to share this, and the podcast was actually something that I thought, I didn't even think of it. I'm not even going to go there. A good friend of mine who I went to college with him, worked with him for several years. He was a chief of police. I was a conservation officer. We got together often. We hunted together. He was not a houndsman. He was a traditional bow hunter. He was in Compton, traditional bow hunters, and very heavily involved in archery and deer hunting, things like that. So he and I would eat lunch often together. And as he rose in the association to the vice president spot of Compton's traditional bow hunting, then he and I started talking about podcasts, and I started listening to podcasts, and I was very entertained. I was very intrigued about doing podcasts, and so I started listening first and seeing how effective it could be to get the message out there about things like the model for North American wildlife conservation, raising awareness on current events happening, techniques that people are using from around the country, and showcasing how hunters are doing things in Arizona to Alaska to Maine. And it was all captured in this podcasting medium. And so I knew that in order for this thing to be successful, then I was going to need to partner with somebody who had a lot of experience. And Steve and I worked together for a lot of years on different projects. And I knew that the span of influence that Steve had, that he could be a credible voice for this program. And I called him, and this was actually December or January. I think it was January of 2018. I said, we need to think about this. And we kicked it around, and we talked about it. And I was working full time as a conservation officer before I retired. And then, so I ended up retiring in November, and I had another job opportunity, and everything was really going well. And then the friend of mine that I was talking about, David Hewitt, he was killed in a car wreck. And I had the opportunity to make a decision right there whether I was going to watch this thing pass me by, or I was going to immerse myself into it and take advantage of it. I mean, he and I sat around and talked about all the things we wanted to do in retirement, the hunting trips we wanted to take, the things we wanted to do. And I felt like this podcast was important, not only for me and for houndsmen, for Houndsman and for me, I should say. But it was also kind of a life lesson when David was killed in the car crash. So that's been the driving force for me to make this thing happen, do it the best I can do it at the highest quality, effectively, and really spread a good message. So that's how I got into it.
Well, buddy, if I can add a little to that, I remember when Chris did present the idea to me, and for years I had wanted to have some type of a radio program for hunters and of course, again, I was swimming in that tank of competition hunters and all those events, literally thousands of them occurring across the country each year, and having, I listened to enough whispering deer hunters and bass kissing fishermen to know that we needed something for the hounds people, but I knew that, and I thought, wow, it would be great just to have a syndicated radio program on Sunday nights after all the big events, and we could have call-ins and do all these things. And it was a dream, but nothing that I ever really thought very seriously about. But then when Chris began to present the idea of the podcast, I said, you know what, that might be a way that I can realize that dream as well. So, but that again, I think I've talked enough about what drives me to do this. But for me, it was an opportunity to do something I've loved since I was a teenager, when I was a secretary for a little coon club in southern West Virginia. And they wanted me to sell the soft drinks, take the entries, crank the water race lure across the pond, lay the field trial drags, put the ad in the paper, buy the trophies, all of that. And from that time, I could never get enough of hounds and hound hunting. So this is in retirement. I'm retired. I've been retired since 2011. I retired with the American Kennel Club, and after being with the UKC and PKC. But this has been something that I've enjoyed a lot. It's been difficult. Chris and I continue to struggle with the technology, and only thing we can tell you is we're working on it, and we're not going to let it go until it gets better.
Well, that's good. Like I said, one of my friends, Matt, worked with us, and he did a lot of these podcasts and listened to it. And I know and Jason also were talking about, we need to do a podcast for W. And I always look at him, I said, go for it. I don't have the time to try it. And we may still do something with it sometime, but when you guys had this going, I always looked at it and go, I think it's a good idea. I wish everything I helped with was just made it easy. I don't know that it makes it successful or not, but I'd be happy to try to, make this work out for you guys, and wherever we can help, we can help. But that was what my questions and 2 cents for you guys were.
Well, buddy, I can tell you that podcast, we didn't know what to expect. I thought we could be successful with it, and we definitely are not where we want to be yet. We're going to continue, like Steve said, to bring quality for our listeners. But right at this point in time, we're actually surpassing any projections that we ever had from our producer and things like that. I think we're still averaging about 300 downloads a day on our podcast. I haven't ran the numbers lately, but at one time we were at 263, and then a week went by, and our likes and our subscribers and our reviews and things on Apple Podcasts and the different podcast venues, we're still climbing. So none of this would be possible if the listeners out there didn't want to listen to this kind of content, and did some research before we started. The field was wide open. So it wasn't like we were trying to start a podcast on something that's already been done 1,000 times. So our listeners are very important to us. We wish we would get, I personally wish we would get more feedback from our listeners, questions or comments or, whatever form they want on our messenger or through email or whatever. We're getting a few, but, we want to hear from people, and let us know how we're doing, or ask us questions, or whatever they want there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just thinking like 300, so the bar of me is like 250, and I'm at least a B minus, right? If I get that many downloads on this one, do people want to hear me talk and gab?
I think our relationship between Houndsman XP and W is going to be a very good one. I think it's going to be mutually beneficial, and I think we're going to be the main beneficiaries here, buddy. In my mind, I think, but we want to grow with you and grow with W as well. So,
well, anything that helps the sport of the hounds, we're definitely, we want to be a part of it. So,
Steve, go ahead.
Going right.
Well, I'm just excited about some of the things that are going. Are we going to talk about some of the new logo wear that's coming?
Are you ready to talk about that, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. So I think it's important that we go ahead and talk about W a little bit more. It is so easy to go online, type in W in your search engine, and bring up W's website. To me, unless you've been living under a rock, you've surely seen the W logo out there. And I've been intrigued by, I've got at least one shirt, maybe two, that was very well designed, and I purchased them. I just threw them on and rounded up, on my order, because I thought it was a cool shirt. I may have ordered the shirt and rounded up with a T5 collar. I'm not sure. I think that's what I told my wife. But so this logo wear that we've got coming out, buddy, you've been extremely generous on this. Your graphics designer has designed logo wear for Houndsman XP, and W is going to be the exclusive dealer for all Houndsman XP logo wear. We're going to start out with a T-shirt, and we've been working on that design, and it's going to be coming out. What's our launch date on that, buddy? What are you thinking?
Did you and Bill get kind of dialed in on your graphic on your T-shirt?
We're there.
I don't know. I've been busy. Bill just looks at me and just growls now. I can't get an answer out of him. I got him working too much stuff, too busy right now. But if you got that design going, it normally takes us around 2 weeks to get shirts printed. So
I think we're by the time this podcast release, we're actually in production for today. That this comes out is the 17th, and when this comes out, it should be ready to rock and roll, and if it's not, it'll be just a couple days.
Yeah, I think that you tell me you want these ready by the 17th, we'll have them on the 17th. And I just like to point out is this kind of the creative idea behind it, and the thought process between the back and forth was, for guys to help support you, the Houndsman XP podcast, we're going to take care of the printing of the shirts and getting them listed and getting them shipped out, and all of the profits and so whatever these guys, whatever you're going to sell these shirts at, we're going to send that directly to you guys to cover your expenses and get this podcast working. So anybody that's listening in and wants to support your podcast, which I think is important for people, you buy the shirt, and all of that money is going to be in a check to Chris and Steve at the Houndsman XP podcast. We're not going to make it. I told him, I said, I don't want to make a profit off of other people, and it's just like our association. We don't take a cut of that. We want it all to go to you guys. So.
Well, buddy, we certainly hope that our listeners are going to take a look at the great products and the great customer service and the reviews that you get. Again, I want to make sure our listeners understand that it is double, DOUBLE, and the letter U is W.
Thanks for pointing that out. I've been spelling that out for a lot of years now. It's just a little bit of a poke in the side there, Steve. I think you did that on purpose.
I just want to make sure they know how to find you so they don't start Googling W and they get George Bush instead. Whatever.
Oh, the pain of the way I name my business, man. It will never leave. It's always going to be there.
Well, it's a great brand.
And just so people know, there is an initial investment for starting a podcast. There is expense involved in doing this. But my view, and I think I share Steve's view in this, is we want to establish the Houndsman XP brand as one of integrity that is always working for the houndsman and bringing a credible voice to the houndsman in a way that my goal is for Steve Ranella of Meat Eater to tune in to listen to my podcast and take something away. You know what I mean? We want to talk about the things like the model of North American wildlife management and provide education and get better sound equipment so that we can do a better job of sharing our passion and the passion of houndsmen across the United States. And that just, it sounds fun, but I got to tell you, it's expensive. It's expensive to do it.
Well, so, Steve went on a hunt with the dogs, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago. We had to chase down who he went on with and try and get him on your show to talk about his hunt with dogs.
Sure.
Yep, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that's one of the great things about this, buddy, is the people that we're meeting. And it's just like meeting you and getting to have these conversations with you, both on the online and off. It's a great fringe benefit for me. And my job over the years was like it was fun because of the people, and this podcasting has proven to be the same. But I think Chris will agree with me. We have not been 100% happy with our sound on these podcasts, and that's something that we're working on to bring the level up. And to make it first class in every way, because we believe, and I know you think this about your customers at WU, that these hounds people out here are worth the very best that we can provide for them. And we're not going to rest until we can do that. Or at least I'm not, and I know Chris isn't.
Nope.
One thing about the hound that I've learned is they're down-to-earth people. They're good. I mean, our customers, houndsmen, they're the best customers you can have. You know what I mean? Like they'll. You don't have to be perfect. You got to admit when you're wrong, but they really they're forgiving and they're really the best of the salt of the earth kind of people. And so I think as long as you're honest with them, they'll be honest with you, and I think it'll be good.
Yeah, and my work, buddy, obviously you can guess that there was some adversarial relationships there between game wardens and houndsmen.
I was going to say you use the word conservation officer, not game warden. I noticed that. I was going to point that out for you, but
I don't mind. I don't mind being called a game warden. In my mind, a game warden is a lot closer to what the type of job that I wanted to do for a number of years in conservation officer. And that's a whole different podcast. But I just saw a group of sportsmen who were not being fairly represented. They didn't have an equal voice at the bargaining table. A lot of the laws and different things that were written pertaining to hound hunters, nobody ever called anybody and asked their opinion on, maybe a fur bearer's biologist or something like that. But there was no organized group that had input on that sort of stuff. And that's what I want to do with the podcast is maybe not lead the charge, because I can't lead the charge for somebody in Utah. That I don't have any clue what needs to be done out there, but I've got an idea of the way it needs to be done, because I have been able to sit in some of those closed door meetings after everybody goes home, and you hear the real decision makers in the room, and they're talking about this or they're talking about that, about which direction they're going to go, and so that's a lot of insight that isn't readily available out there to your average houndsman, and that's what we hope to bring to the show. That's my input. And my passion, besides hound hunting.
Right on.
Well, Steve, you got some concluders for this thing?
Well, first of all, again, I think the relationship between Houndsman XP and W Hound or Hunting Supply is, as the old saying back in the hills where I come from, is a marriage made in heaven, because we have the same goals. I think we have the same heart. We share. And I'm not getting choked up. I think I feel a cough spasm coming on here. Chris, take this for a minute.
All right, I'll take it over. Buddy, you got any concluders?
I was just going to ask, is it the second or third marriage in a hound relationship? Because normally we always joke that, I can't remember my third ex-wife's name, but I can remember every dog I've had for the last 20 years. When he says a marriage, I'm trying to figure out, is this the second marriage, or which one's going to be successful? Because hopefully the first one works, right?
Yeah, you got to take into consideration, Steve is an author, so he sits around and uses big words and articulates very well.
Well, you guys were talking about your wives earlier.
Okay.
And just to be fair to a terrific lady here that puts up with all my running around the country and all, Miss Ella and I went to high school together. We were sweethearts, and we went our separate ways about college time and didn't see each other for 35 years. And thanks to Al Gore's internet, we got back together and just having a wonderful life here in Florida. So I can appreciate everything you're saying about your wives, because I have one that's pretty special too.
Yes,
Just
absolutely.
thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah.
Well, buddy, what kind of expectations do you have of your involvement with us as a concluder?
I always set my expectations low so I can meet them. You know what I mean? That's why I said if we get 250, I'm good. If you got 300 and I make 250, I'm cool with that. Yeah. If we started off and talk about dogs and keep the focus on dogs, I think it'll be something we want to stay a part of. That's my expectations. I don't like talking about me too much, but I'd hope to tune in and listen about some dogs.
Great. Well, Steve, how about wrapping this thing up for us?
Well, buddy, we have a way of closing this thing out. I borrowed the words that I heard one day in West Virginia as we were attempting to start a sheep killing bear track, and everybody wanted to go one way except my friend John Harris, and he said, fellas, you follow your hound and I'll follow mine.